Okay, so I've done a couple of tweaks to this character, admittedly, but this is done now. I've kind of fleshed out the character's shape, I've coloured it in, and we've configured the grid. Now I'm going to create several frames of animation, which is going to be left foot up, right foot up, jumping, and maybe death. I don't know. We'll see. For now, let's just get started with left and right, and we can always expand it from there. So I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and it's going to be set to centimeters. I'm pretty sure if you go to General Settings, you can configure it by default to be pixels. But I'm just going to set it to pixels, and I'm going to expand it width-wise, and that needs to be 3 frames along, so that'll be 96. I found that learning my 32 times table and getting my head around powers of 2 is quite a useful tool for that. So as you can see, this character's in the middle of these 2 frames. That's because when we expanded the image, I didn't give it an anchor point for which way to expand. It was just left by default at the center. So if I set it to the left, it would create the 2 new frames to the right rather than one on the left and one on the right. Now I'm going to go to the selection tool, and I'm going to draw a square box around my character. If you want to make sure that it remains square, hold down Shift, and those grid lines you drew earlier should indicate where you want to stop. And theoretically, if you've kept it to 32 by 32, you'll reach the bottom, and that should indicate where you meant to stop. Now, I could do copy and paste here, so that'd be edit, copy, edit, paste, to create another character. And that works. The only thing with that is if you forget that a layer has been created over here. So layers, for anyone who doesn't know, are like kind of as you create more and more kind of parts to your image, you'll kind of build up lots of layers. You know, for example, if you wanted to have hills in front of a castle in the distance, you would create a new layer on top of, you know, that said castle. So let me just draw a quick hill, for example. So castle on a hill. You know, maybe you would want another hill in front of that. So you could just do that. But if you then, for example, wanted to make a parallax scrolling image, that image is all one. If I create on a front layer, I can then export that as a separate image. So you'd have like a fancy kind of parallax effect. You can use it for all sorts of different things. You know, if you have a character with limbs, you know, you can build it up out of. You can also use it for things like tracing and things like that. Layers are really, really useful. But in this situation, they can be quite confusing, because if you don't realize that you've created layers, let's say you create 3 layers of characters, and then you go back to, let's say, the background layer, and then you decide that you want to edit this character over here, you're not going to be able to, because you're drawing on the back layer. So I find it's at this point, messing with layers, it gets a bit confusing. So what I would suggest instead is go to the Move tool, which is this one up here with the kind of the triangular arrow and the kind of cross move tool thing. The shortcut for that is V, by the way. And if you grab it, you can move that to whatever position you want, which is useful in itself. But if you press Alt, can you see that there's like, it changes the cursor? to have kind of like an extra little triangle on the cursor. That means that when you click and drag, it'll create a copy, which is great because it means you can very quickly put the images down on the page. So now what I'm going to do, oh, don't forget to deselect, go select and deselect. The shortcut for that would be Control and D. So now I'm going to go back to the brush tool. The shortcut for that would be B. I'm going to tweak and refine these characters based on their animations. So this first one is going to be standing. The second one is going to be raising his left leg, and this one's going to be raising his right leg. So for this, I'm going to use the select tool, and I'm going to draw a little box around his leg. And I'm going to go back to the move tool that I was on before, and I'm going to raise his leg up a little bit, like that. Now you could go in and you could kind of make it look all pretty and add shading and stuff like that, but I'm just going to keep it simple for now. Another handy hint is if you press F, you can switch between viewing modes. That last one's pretty good for like looking at how an image looks, you know, in final presentation. This one is alright, but you can't move around in it. This is usually the windowed mode where you've got lots of different windows open. But the one in between those two, you can see it kind of gets rid of the borders. Whoa. Gets rid of the borders of the image. So in this one it's rigid, but in this one I can move around using the space bar, and that is pretty handy when you're kind of nipping around an image. Anyway, so I'm going to go to the selection tool again, raise up this foot. Now can you see here that because it's selected white in this section here, when I raise it, it kind of cuts off a little bit of the guy's inner leg. So I'm just going to draw that back using the eyedropper tool. And yeah, so that's a basic walk animation done. You know, you can go in and you can tweak and refine it, you know, however you want. But I'm just going to go with that for now. Now, if I want to add an extra frame to this for jump, because I've just realized we said we were going to do that, I need to go to Image, Canvas Size. Now, I mentioned earlier about anchoring. I'm going to show you what happens if you don't anchor. So I'm going to set it to 128, which is the next multiple of 32. And I'm going to click OK. Now, if you look at how it's expanded, it's messed up our grid line, and it's created two useless spaces. Because it's expanded here and here rather than just out this side. So I'm just going to go Edit and Undo, and I'm going to show you how to do that properly. Canvas size. Come on. So I'm going to anchor it to the left, top left-hand corner, and set that to 128. And there you go. Right, so I'm going to very quickly select this character. Again, hold down Alt, click and drag whilst using the Move tool, and deselect. Go back to the pencil to the Select tool. I'm going to raise those two legs again. Whoop. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to nip into his face, and I'm going to make him look kind of surprised as he jumps. So yeah, I think that'll do for now. Simple. Okay, so that is kind of the main process of creating your sprites. What I'll do in the next section is kind of cover some kind of nice little hints and tips, good things to know. But for the most part, this covers the majority of it. The only and then there's exporting as well, which we'll cover in the next section.